Psalm 139 is a well-known psalm of the great King David, and many people are very familiar with the first part of that psalm, where David talks about how God knows us deeply, how God knows our thoughts, our ways, and our words even before we speak them, and how we are fearfully and wonderfully made by God. But many people are less familiar with the end of that psalm, where David turns to the issue of his enemies. And after asking God to deal with these people who are trying to do him harm, David also writes this in Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. He says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." So here, David very wisely asks God to help him see what's going on inside of himself and his own heart. David doesn't assume that his enemies are the only ones who may be off track and have issues that need to be dealt with. And this kind of self-reflection is really important in our lives for a lot of different reasons. But one place that it is especially as important is when we have conflict with other people. Because you see, the truth is that conflict is almost never completely one-sided. In the vast, overwhelming majority of cases, we have played a part in the conflict that we experience, even if it is the smaller part. So when we have conflict with other people, we need to be willing to self-reflect and to ask God to help us to see the truth about ourselves and our behavior. We need to be willing to ask hard questions like, am I a part of the problem? Or what part am I playing in it? How have I contributed to this difficult situation? Because if we're not willing to do this when we have conflict with others, and also just generally from time to time in our lives, it's going to be really unlikely that we're going to grow. Because so often it is hard for us to see the places we need to grow and to see the work that we need to do in ourselves. One thing that I like to do to illustrate this point is to make the case to people that rarely do you meet anyone who thinks they're a jerk. I mean, every once in a while you might meet some person who says, yeah, I'm kind of jerky, but most of the time, no one that you know is going to say, yes, I'm a jerk. But then if you ask people, well, how many jerks are there out there? People say, well, there's so many, there's just tons of jerks. So you see, the issue is that no one thinks they're a jerk, but there are a lot of jerks out there. So the reality is that the jerks don't see that they're jerks. And what that means is that there's always the possibility that we are one of the jerks. And all kidding aside, that's probably true to some degree, because we tend to have these blind spots to our own shortcomings, to our own jerkiness, to the places where we need to grow and to work on ourselves. And we need to be willing to do that self-reflection that I was talking about. Because if we're willing to self-reflect with God's help, we're going to begin to see more and more those places we need to grow, that work that we need to do in ourselves with God's help. And if we get after it, then more and more we are going to be becoming the great people that God has made us and called us to be. And that's a fantastic goal.